Greetings. It's wonderful to be gathered in spirit with you, separate but still gathered in harmony with the beliefs that we share and the community we share. Many, many thanks to our worship team this week, Jeanne Malmgren, who each year leads the VESAK service, which is adapted this year. To Jason Harding for the meta meditation, Corey Dodgens, as always, for his beautiful music, and Georgia McCowan, who is our service weaver this week, and Elaine Faithful for her aesthetics connected to the music. We thank them for their commitment of time and creativity. And we welcome all of you, those who are part of this community and those who may be visiting. Today, we're going to bring our VESAK service, which honors the birth, enlightenment, and death of the Buddha, into our homes with a simple ritual. So I invite you right now, if you have not done it already, to get a container and put some water in it, and an object, maybe a rock. I have a special rock of mine, and a spoon. And during the ritual, you'll be invited to participate in a symbolic acts as we live in this time of pandemic. So you might want to go get your props for that ritual right now. Remember, if you're interested in participating in any of our weekly events, there are links in the weekly connection that are printed there, and you can just go to the weekly connection and find the link for the event that you're interested in. As always, thank you so much for your generous gifts for our fellowship, that we may continue our work and continue to support our staff. And also, thank you for supporting the benevolences that are so important to our congregation, especially right now, Clemson Community Care and Family Promise, who help the most vulnerable of our community. So in a spirit of community and caring and compassion, let's take a little breath so we can be more at ease as we enter into this service. And let's just take a couple of deep cleansing breaths. We often breathe very shallowly, but let's breathe in very deeply and exhale. In and out. Our opening words today come from Bodhisattva Vows, and they're adopted from those vows. May all sentient beings be well and enjoy the root of happiness, free from suffering and the root of suffering. May they not be separated from the joy beyond sorrow. May they dwell in spacious equanimity, free from craving, fear, and ignorance. As we light the chalice this morning, I invite us to share our affirmation, which begins, "We gather together in a spirit of love with justice as our guide. This is our chosen covenant to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth with freedom, and to care for one another." Today, for our celebrations and concerns, we hold privately in our hearts and minds all of the fears, the anxieties, the celebrations, and the victories and the joys, all that is in the whole of our lives. We also focus today on those who are ill in mind, body, or spirit, those who are suffering physically because of COVID-19 or other illnesses, and also those who are suffering in their hearts because of loved ones that are lost, and those who are worried for loved ones who are ill and have to be hospitalized without family and loved ones to be able to be with them. And we hold up today the wonder and mystery of life. Life in all its breadth and depth, its joy and its sorrow. And in that spirit, let us take a few moments of silent prayer and meditation. As we hold all this, let us hear the words of the great Buddhist teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh. Let us be at peace with our bodies and our minds. Let us return to ourselves and become wholly ourselves. Let us be aware of the source of being, common to us all and to all living things, evoking the presence of the great compassion. Let us fill our hearts with our own compassion towards ourselves and towards all living beings. Let us pray that we ourselves cease to be the cause of suffering to each other. With humility, with awareness of the existence of life and of the sufferings that are ongoing around us, let us practice the establishment of peace in our hearts and on earth. Amen.
Hello friends, and welcome to our VESAK service. I'm a little sad that we can't share this time in person, but I'm also grateful that we have this way to connect. So thank you for being here this morning and joining in with us to celebrate this very sacred Buddhist holiday. Reverend Terre asked me to speak today about one of the foundational teachings of Buddhism, And I think it's a really appropriate choice for these times that we're living in right now. Times of anxiety and fear and a sense of fragility. Everything seems so fragile right now. So the subject of the Dharma talk this morning is impermanence. Impermanence is what the Buddha described as one of the three marks or characteristics of existence. He called it, in the ancient language of Pali, he called it anicca, impermanence. The other two marks of existence are dukkha, or suffering, and anatta, or selflessness. Now, the Buddha was really firm and very, very specific that all phenomena are undergoing change from moment to moment. Arising, passing away, coming and going, living and dying. Even this human body, which we tend to see as a substantial thing, is constantly changing. We shed skin cells, we grow fingernails, we grow hair, our hair falls out, our hair turns gray. When we're young, we grow and become stronger, larger. When we're old, the body begins to deteriorate. We become weaker. So we have an experience of impermanence right here in our own body. And it's also our experience of everything. In the Dhammapada, which is a collection of Buddha's scriptures in verse form, the Buddha says in Pali, Sabbe sankhara anicchati yada panyaya pasati atta nibbānam dukkhe asamago visuddhya. And in English, that means all things are impermanent. When one observes this with insight, then one becomes detached from suffering. This is the path to purification. Now, just before he died, the Buddha was attended by his disciples who were waiting breathlessly as he slipped nearer and nearer to death, and they wanted one last teaching from the Buddha. So he had one more chance to offer something to them and to the world. These were his very last words that he chose, his last message. And he said, all compounded things are impermanent. All things conditioned are subject to change. The Buddha really wanted us to understand and to grasp this truth, this concept that all things are impermanent. And those last words that he spoke are very commonly recited at funerals in Buddhist countries, to just basically remind us of the impermanence of the human body and human life, of all life. Another Buddhist tradition is offering fresh flowers whenever we pay respect to a Buddha image, either on an altar in our home or in a temple somewhere. And we offer the flowers, of course, as an offering of beauty and respect to the Buddha, but also to symbolize impermanence, this fundamental teaching of impermanence. Because these beautiful flowers that are so lovely and fragrant, when we offer them, the next day or the day after that might be just withered and dead. Now, one of the reasons that I'm sitting here in the woods this morning, this kind of chilly morning, is that when I think of nature, when I think of impermanence, I think of nature. Nature provides us with a wonderful example of impermanence. It's a great teacher of that concept. And I appreciate how much nature has to teach us. And it really teaches us how to accept impermanence with grace in the way that nature accepts the changes. You know, in spring, there are some beautiful mountain coves near here in the Blue Ridge foothills, and there are tiny wildflowers that bloom at a certain time in the very early spring, late winter, early spring. And those wildflowers are called, by botanists, they're called spring ephemerals. Such a lovely phrase, spring ephemerals. And they really are ephemeral. They appear very suddenly, seemingly very suddenly. They're only with us a short time, and then as more sunlight reaches the forest floor, they cannot handle the sunlight, so they die out. So they come very quickly and they leave very quickly, ephemeral. We just get to enjoy them for a short while. So, you know, it's the same with trees. These trees around me, maybe 6 weeks ago, were completely bare, and I could look up through the bare branches and just see the sky very clearly above me. And then the little leaf tips, the little buds of the leaves came out on the ends of the branches, very small and colorful. And now, look, fully leafed out, beautiful, you know, reflecting the sunlight, moving in the wind. And maybe 6 months from now, 5 or 6 months from now, these leaves will fall, of course. They will turn colors and fall and become mulch for next year's growth, just as last year's leaves have become mulch now for this year's growth. So there's that cyclical movement of change and arising and passing away that we can see in nature. Of course, the Buddha was not the only brilliant mind who had something to say about impermanence. There was also the Greek philosopher Heraclitus, who said, "There is no static being. Change and movement is the Lord of the universe. Everything is in a state of becoming, of continual flux." And that's actually part of a more famous quote, which you might have heard of. The more commonly quoted part of this teaching from Heraclitus is, "No one ever steps in the same river twice." That's an amazing way to put it and to express it, isn't it? No one ever steps in the same river twice, because that river will never again be as it was in that exact moment when you dipped your toe in it. It's always moving, always flowing, impermanent. I'd like to share another quote. This one is from a female Tibetan Lama named Pema Khandro Rinpoche. I love this quote. She has something positive to say about impermanence. She says, "Impermanence is not just an illuminator of loss, it's also an illuminator of newness. It's an illuminator of the ever unfolding present moment and its creativity." That's more positive, right? Impermanence is not only about loss and sadness. It's not all negative. It's not only about things and people we love passing away. It's not only about us losing what we cherish in this life. It's also about the present moment and how everything is new and fresh in each moment. It's that river that's never exactly the same. It's always a new river. So if we're not so focused on the loss part of impermanence, we can discover the freshness of the very next moment, always presenting itself to our awareness if we're paying attention. So impermanence is really a teacher for us. And here's where I think this teaching might be useful to us right now in the middle of this pandemic that we are weathering and experiencing and living through. Because impermanence teaches us to let go of what we're trying so desperately to hold on to. Whether it's our youth or our loved ones or our life as we know it, or even things as they used to be before COVID-19, life as we knew it before. Impermanence teaches us that if we let go, we can fully and deeply and completely experience the richness and freshness of the present moment. We can fully live in the here and now. So to close, I want to share some lines with you from poet Mary Oliver, the poet laureate of awareness and mindfulness and nature, of course. You probably know this poem if you're a Mary Oliver fan. It's called In Blackwater Woods. And in this poem, Mary Oliver talks about impermanence. She doesn't use the word impermanence, but it's definitely here. So I'm just going to read the last couple stanzas. This is the way that the poem ends in Blackwater Woods. To live in this world, you must be able to do three things: to love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones, knowing that your own life depends on it, and when the time comes, to let it go, to let it go. So if we really think about it, impermanence is actually a gift. It's a blessing. It helps us really pay attention to how precious everything that we experience is. The taste of the air around us, the colors of nature, the face of a loved one, the sound of a bird, just the sweetness of this moment. Everything we encounter and experience as we move through our lives. All of it will change, yes, inevitably. And we cannot stop that ceaseless flow of change. We must yield. But if everything is impermanent, everything is precious. So thank you for joining me today for this teaching. And I'm going to yield the floor now back to Terre, who has put together a beautiful ritual for us this morning. If you are a veteran of our VESAK services at UUFC, you know that we usually have a lovely ritual we share in called Bathing of the Buddha. And so Terre has designed an in-home version which we can do together. So I will give it back to Terre now. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you for joining me for this ritual. It's very simple and very personal. I know in other years we've had a beautifully decorated sanctuary and a beautiful, huge bowl that we could all use to bathe the baby Buddha. Today we're going to bring our ritual and meditation more into an inner space. And I have a bowl, a little bowl that I made years ago. And whatever bowl or container that you have your special object in, imagine that it represents the breadth of our lives, our communities, our extended family and friend networks. This is the vessel that holds who we are. Whatever object that you have in it, I imagine has special meaning to you. I hope it does. This is a special rock that my kids and I found when we were gem mining. And whatever our object is, let's imagine that it holds the essence, the core of our being. This is our strength and our being. The water, here I've got a spoon to do the ritual. The water represents all that flows over and around and through us. And so with these simple objects that are in our lives all the time, let us take a few moments of meditation to open our hearts and minds. So let's just breathe slowly in through our nose and out through our nose, acknowledging what holds our bodies tense, what we need to let go for these next few moments. So we breathe in and out. So our first act of meditation is to consider what we need now to live fully, what we need to do now to cleanse our hearts and minds from the fear and anxiety that we've been feeling for these last few weeks, even if we let them go just for a few moments. So think about those fears and that anxiety, maybe even some grief. And now I invite you to pour water over this object that represents the core of your being, and put your intention that this water is washing away that fear and anxiety, even for a few moments, to give us some peace and hope. Now focus on what you're grateful for. Hold in your heart and mind people, places, conversations, experiences, the things that give our life pleasure and joy and happiness these days. Whether it's that bird building a nest in your yard, or a conversation you had with an old friend who you may not have talked to for months or years. Things your kids did that, even on a day when they were stepping on your last nerves, brought you joy and pleasure. So let's hold in our hearts, hearts and minds, the people, places, conversations, experiences that give us joy. And because we know we have so many blessings and abundance in our lives, let's pour some water, letting it soak in to our being, our gratitude for all of those people and events and conversations. Let that water of our abundance and blessing pour over us, giving us perspective of all that we receive from the abundance of life. And now I ask us to consider the thoughts or actions that we want to bring into our lives that will bring us more hope, more joy, more peace, more happiness. Just hold for a moment. What might those thoughts or actions be? We've been in seclusion for quite a while, and yet we know that there's more to come. So what intentions, what positive things do we want to bring into our lives now that bring us closer to the joy and happiness that we would like to have in our moment, in our lives for right now, this moment? And what do we want to do to make our lives and the lives of others better? What actions do we want to take on? What do we want to leave off? How do we want to live our lives with more intention? So let's think of those as commitments. What do we want to commit to ourselves for our future? Hold those in our hearts. And let's pour those commitments as if they're waters flowing into our hearts and nurturing dry soil. A lot of us may feel right now that our hearts and minds are in drought. And yet, what commitments can we make that will bring joy and peace and hope and compassion into our lives? We've released our fears and anxiety for a few moments. We've taken the time, like we need to do every day or several times a day, to remember our blessings and those things that we need to have gratitude for. And we've taken a few moments to consider how we might be more intentional about the thoughts and the actions and the priorities that we choose to nurture and nourish us. May this be a time that brings us well-being. And may we return to this simple ritual when we feel that we are returning to a sense of fear and anxiety, when we feel like we're forgetting what is in our highest good and the highest good of those around us. Blessed be.
May we settle ourselves free from distraction, take a few breaths, and focus now on a metta prayer. And may we first think about befriending ourselves and say, may I be filled with loving kindness. May I be safe from inner and outer dangers. May I be well in body and mind. May I be at ease and happy. And for those who we love and hold dear, may we also extend our love to them and say, may you be filled with loving kindness. May you be safe from inner and outer dangers. May you be well in body and mind. May you be at ease and happy. And extending our heart and love even further, may we include those who we have disagreements and those who we do not like by saying, may you be filled with loving kindness. May you be safe from inner and outer dangers. May you be well in body and mind. may you be at ease and happy. And finally, extending ourselves and our energies, may we say, may we be filled with love and kindness. May we be safe from inner and outer dangers. May we be well in body and mind, and may we be at ease and happy.